Have you ever experienced believing for such a long time that something is impossible to do or something is impossible to exist in terms of your gear and in terms of your photography? Well, this lens is that for me. In this video, let's talk about Laowa's new lens that is a 12 to 24 millimeter zoom, but at the same time is also a shift lens. Now, I always introduce myself as a landscape and architectural photographer. But when it comes to this channel, architectural photography is perhaps the one that I don't get to talk about as much as I want to. And of course, that is also because the gear is not that common. But since I started the channel around 4 years ago, I've been lucky enough to test out two of Laowa's shift lenses, which are the 15mm and the 20mm. And I would say the two of them on their own are actually very good options already. Not just very good options, but very good collection of options. Personally, I've been using the 15mm. I've been wanting to get the 20mm as well because there are times wherein I do want a bit of a tighter perspective. And again, this is something that I thought was not even possible when it comes to lenses. And yet here we are. This is the Laowa 12 to 24 f5.6 zoom shift lens. Now the question is it really such a big deal? Well, to me, yes. Not only because it's a great proof of concept, but also because it basically merges a lot of the lenses that I would want to have whenever I'm shooting. Now, the only limitation, just for myself, it might not be one for you, is the fact that it is made for APS-C. And that's probably the reason why it's considerably small, it's considerably light as well. I would think that something like this for a full frame would be bigger and probably heavier as well. Now, if you're watching this hoping that it is for full frame, that might not be entirely a deal breaker. I did try it out and I will tell you the findings a little bit later on. But before that, let's get into the specifics of this lens. Now, let's talk about the measurements first. This comes in at just 98.9mm by 80mm wide and comes in at just 575 grams. I would say it is considerably compact for what it does. Significantly compact for what it does. Now, just like most other Laowa lenses, it comes with an all-metal lens cap, and you twist that to remove it, and you will see in front is a subtly rounded front element. Along with that are ridges that basically act as a petal lens hood, but in addition to the lens cap, it also comes with this, which is basically a secondary hood, and at the same time is also, so yes, you can use this with regular sized circular filters or even filter systems with adapters. Now, I don't really own too many circular filters anymore, but I tried it out with the HNY Revo Ring VND CPL version 2. And well, of course, since it's 77mm, it fits within the 67 to 82 that the Revo Ring can mount onto. And as an added feature, I like the fact that if you're going to remove your filters entirely, you can just take out the adapter or the holder and everything is out in just one twist. Now, what I would say is that I kind of wish there was a bit more friction in terms of this motion right here, just so if you're using a CPL and you're rotating something, you don't accidentally remove the adapter altogether and it doesn't lead into any untoward event. Now, just below the front element, we have Laowa's blue lens ring and of course the markings CF 12 to 24 f5.6 zoom shift. Right below that is the focus ring, which is, I would say, around an inch thick. And very close to that would be the zoom ring, which goes from 12mm all the way to 24 as you rotate it clockwise. Now, first impression is that this might be the thinnest zoom ring I've ever seen on any lens. And with the same size, comes the aperture ring that does have clicks and only comes with stops on f5.6, 8, 11, 16, and 22. And of course, the last and most proximal ring would be the shift ring. And you can see here on the indicator how many millimeters you've shifted. And of course, that goes from left to right or up and down, depending on the orientation of the camera. On this side, we have a knob that basically controls the friction, or basically controls how smooth or how easy it is to shift the entire barrel. If we turn this clockwise and lock it, there would be a lot more resistance and even no movement at all. So this is a good way to at least control the experience of shifting the lens, and number two, preventing it from shifting unintentionally. Now this button right here basically locks and unlocks the rotation, and if you press it, you're able to rotate it all the way 360 degrees. I'm gonna mount it on the ZV-E10 right here to show you something that I feel like I need to say. So again, we press this button to be able to rotate, and rotate that all the way, and we're good. So the marker is at 0. With this configuration, basically you get to shift up and down if you are on horizontal orientation, or you get to shift from left to right if you are on vertical orientation, right? And of course, if we press the button again and we turn it this way, then you can go from left to right on horizontal, so this will give you a much longer axis, or it can go up and down when you are on vertical orientation. So as an architectural photographer, whenever I'm shooting something tall, basically it's going to be on this configuration, and I would shift up to be able to get the tall structure. Now, of course, aside from horizontal and vertical, technically, again, there are multiple stops on the rotation, because technically you can also move up and down or side to side, or even diagonally if you wanted to. And that works for taking single images at the same time. That also works for shooting panoramas. Now, what I do have to say is that while I like the width of the focus ring, I wouldn't mind it being a bit thinner so that you could have a thicker zoom ring. The aperture ring is totally fine at this point with this width for me. It would be nicer if we're able to get a thicker shift ring as well. But more than that, what I think would be good in terms of the user experience is that they could also put markings on the other side. Because remember, if you're shooting this way, and for whatever reason you've rotated it this way, then you're facing an entirely bare and empty surface. And because the stops are fixed on these, like the focus ring has ends to the range of it, the zoom ring has ends to the range of it as well, and of course the aperture ring has only a few stops, then technically they could put secondary markers here, maybe smaller marks, maybe I don't know, faint marks, but nonetheless it would benefit from having marks on this side as well, so that if ever you're shooting like this, or if ever you're shooting vertical and you need it to be on the other side or whatever, then you don't have to look from here or look from under just to see the focal length you're using or the aperture that you're using. Now, I really wouldn't call this a full review. More than anything, I think this is an initial impression. After all, this is just my third or fourth day with this lens, so I don't feel like I've shot with it enough to talk about in depth the image quality and the sharpness. However, what I can say at this point is that it's pretty consistent with the image quality that Laowa gives. It has really good sharpness for the majority of the frame and just a little bit of fall off on the corner. At the same time, they did not call this a 0D lens because there is evidently a bit of distortion to a controlled extent. And generally, you would see that towards the corners of the shorter side. Now again, I've only shot with this twice. I want to test it out further to be able to tell you later on, maybe in another video, about which aperture would give you the sharpest corner to corner, and at the same time basically just how the distortion behaves when it comes to the focal length. But yes, altogether, again, first impression, it is quite the statement. It is quite a proof of concept. The mere fact that Laowa is the first company to come up with a lens that both zooms in and out and shifts is already such a statement. Now, optically, again, it's also pretty good. Ever since Laowa came out with the 15mm shift, that has been one of my mainstay lenses that I shoot with professionally, and I can see the same image quality here. I also specifically tested out to see the sun stars, and across the range of f5.6 to f22, I did not see anything too overwhelming, which is really good for the kind of use that we would use this on. A huge bonus is definitely the fact that you can use filters on it. You can even use thick filters or a thick stack of filters on it, so that's a huge plus. And perhaps the biggest wish I would have for this lens is again for there to be a full frame version. Now, I did test it out with a full frame camera. In fact, I tested it out with the A7R5, and one thing is that the image quality is retained even if you're using a high-resolution full-frame camera. And number two, and perhaps a bit of good news for those who want to try this out with a full frame, is that it is actually usable with a full frame. However, there will be limitations. If you use it on the tighter end at 24mm, even at 16mm actually, then you can use it with a full range of shift all the way to 7mm. However, if you go any wider than 16, especially if you go all the way to 12mm, then you would only be able to shift around 3mm on either side. More than that, if you want to use it just as a regular 12mm wide-angle lens, it is absolutely usable. So I guess the only reason why this wasn't specifically labeled as a full-frame lens and is instead being sold as an APS-C lens is because there would be vignetting. You would see the edges of the image circle if you go beyond 3mm on full frame at 12mm of focal length. So those are my initial findings. I'm not sure how long I'll be able to test this out, but I do want to shoot with it more. I tested it out with the ZV-E10 Mark I. As you might already know, the ZV-E10 Mark II has an upgraded sensor, and I could also test it out with the A6700 that I don't have at the moment, but I want to be able to use it with the upgraded sensor and see the difference as well. Nonetheless, if you have any questions about the Laowa 12-24 f5.6 zoom shift lens, then you can of course leave them down below in the comment section, and I will try my best to answer them. And if I don't know the answer yet, I will try my best to test it out as well, as long as I have the lens. And of course, if you're new to the channel, my name is Nicco Valenzuela. I am a landscape and architectural photographer, and the content in this channel is a lot about the gear and also about the process of shooting. So if you're into that, then click that subscribe button and hit that notification bell. In any case, thanks for watching.